My beloved child, stop right there and listen with your whole heart, because tonight I am revealing something that your spirit has already felt but your mind has not yet understood. Someone inside your world finally broke down talking about you, and what they revealed is so heavy, so raw, that it quietly shook your entire family without them even realizing how deep this goes. Picture the scene, a normal evening, the kind of evening where everyone is pretending that everything is fine, scrolling on their phones, making small talk, acting like the tension in the air doesn't exist. But inside one person's chest, something was boiling. They had been carrying a secret about you for so long that it started burning through their calm, cracking their composure. They tried to smile and act normal, but their eyes kept drifting, their hands kept tightening, their heart kept whispering, "Say it, say the truth," and then, in a moment that no one expected, they finally whispered your name. The second your name came out of their mouth, the energy in the room shifted. It was like the air thickened, like the light dimmed for a split second, and the people around them felt that something serious was coming. They tried to start casually, but their voice trembled on the very first sentence. They said, "I can't keep this inside anymore. I need to talk about them," and everyone's attention zoomed in. Some people leaned forward. Some froze. One person even tried to change the topic, because they knew deep down that if this truth came out, nothing would be the same again. But it was too late. The dam inside their heart had already cracked. My beloved child, this person didn't break down because they hated you. They broke down because they had been holding back feelings, fears, guilt, and truth about you for far too long. Every time they looked at you, they pretended not to see your pain. Every time you walked past them, they saw the weight on your shoulders, the tiredness behind your eyes, the way you laughed but your soul didn't. They watched you survive days that would have destroyed someone else. They watched you be strong in situations where you had every right to collapse. And silently, they started feeling like a coward, because they were watching your struggle and pretending nothing was wrong. Tonight their heart couldn't handle that guilt anymore. Their hands began shaking, their throat locked up, and tears gathered in their eyes while they said, "You all have no idea what they've been through. You only see the surface. You only see what they allow you to see." There was a silence in the room, a painful silence, as everyone exchanged confused glances. One person scoffed, like this was an exaggeration. Another raised an eyebrow, already feeling defensive, because the truth has a way of making people uncomfortable when it exposes their blindness. But this person refused to stop. They wiped their tears and continued, "You don't understand how many nights they cried alone. You don't know how many times they chose to protect you instead of speaking up about what was done to them. You don't know what they are holding inside just to keep this family from falling apart." The more they spoke, the more their body trembled, because they were finally saying out loud what their soul had been screaming for months, maybe even years. My beloved child, the truth they revealed was this: you have been misunderstood, judged, and blamed for things that were never your fault, while quietly carrying burdens that no one ever thanked you for. They told the family about the times you stayed awake, worrying about everyone else while no one checked on you. They talked about the sacrifices you made in silence, the opportunities you walked away from, the dreams you put on hold, the pain you swallowed, just so others could be comfortable. They reminded them of the moments when you were treated like the problem, when in reality you were the one holding everything together from behind the scenes. Their voice cracked when they said, "You all keep thinking they're distant, they're cold, they've changed, but did you ever ask why? Did you ever sit with them and listen to what broke them in the first place?" Someone in that room shifted uncomfortably, because they remembered the last time they dismissed your feelings as overreacting. Another person suddenly recalled ignoring that message you sent when you were clearly not okay. The guilt started floating in the air like a thick cloud. One person tried to speak up in their defense, saying, "We didn't know," but the one who broke down responded, "You didn't want to know. Because if you truly listened, you would have had to admit that you failed them when they needed you." My beloved child, every word they spoke about you carried weight, because it came from a place of truth and pain. They told the story of the night you almost gave up, not on life, but on hope, when you sat in your room, finally accepting that maybe no one would ever really understand you. They told everyone how you looked at your phone, scrolling through your contacts, wondering who you could call, and realized that even the people closest to you wouldn't fully get it. They talked about how you've been surviving on autopilot, doing what you need to do, functioning, smiling, talking, but never truly feeling safe enough to collapse in front of anyone. And then they said something that made everyone's heart stop for a moment. You have no idea how strong they had to be just to still be here, sitting among us, acting normal like nothing is wrong. You have no idea how many times they chose peace over revenge. You have no idea how many times they wanted to walk out of this house and never look back, but they stayed, for all of you. The room went silent again. Some eyes dropped to the floor. Someone swallowed hard, feeling a lump in their throat. In that moment, for the first time, your story started to sound different in their minds. You were no longer the one who doesn't talk much, who always stays in their room, who changed, who became distant. You suddenly became the one who was silently holding battle scars that no one ever cared to look at. My beloved child, the person who broke down didn't stop there. They also admitted their own mistakes. With tears in their eyes, they confessed, "I saw their pain and stayed quiet. I saw the way they shrank themselves to keep the peace. I watched them be blamed for fights they didn't start. I watched them apologize just so the argument would end, even when they weren't wrong. And I did nothing. I stayed neutral. I acted like it wasn't my place. But neutrality is also a choice. And my silence hurt them too." That confession shook the room even more, because it exposed something deeper. It wasn't just what people did to you that caused your pain, it was also what they didn't do. The times they didn't show up. The times they didn't defend you. The times they didn't believe you. The times they minimized your feelings because it was easier for them. And right now, as you listen to this, your soul recognizes every bit of it. My beloved child, I want you to understand, you are not crazy for feeling misunderstood. You are not dramatic for feeling exhausted. You are not too sensitive for wanting someone to finally see what you have carried alone. Tonight, heaven allowed this breakdown to happen for a reason. It was not random. It was a divine release, a spiritual unlocking. The truth needed a mouth, and that person became the vessel. Because your story could not stay buried any longer. Your soul needed someone in that room to finally say, they are not the villain here. They are not the problem. They are the wounded one who kept loving anyway. As they continued talking, someone in the room quietly wiped a tear. Another person avoided eye contact, ashamed. Another suddenly felt a strange urge to reach out to you, to ask if you are really okay. And even though no one said it out loud yet, a silent realization passed through their hearts: they had misjudged you. They had taken your strength for granted. They had assumed you didn't need checking on. They had mistaken your silence for distance, not realizing it was self-protection. My beloved child, the truth that came out about you is not meant to break you, it is meant to free you. This is your confirmation that heaven has seen every tear you cried when no one was watching. Heaven has heard every word you never dared to speak. Heaven has felt every time your heart whispered, I wish someone would understand me. And now, slowly, the people around you are being forced to see you not through the lens of their convenience, but through the lens of your truth. There will be some who still refuse to accept this. Some will cling to their version of the story because it's easier than admitting they were wrong. Let them. Their denial does not erase your reality. Their pride does not cancel your growth. Their refusal to apologize does not stop the spiritual shift that is already happening in your favor. What matters is this: the universe has started exposing what was hidden, and every hidden truth about your pain is now becoming a key to your elevation. Soon, the same people who dismissed your emotions will wonder how you kept going when they finally realize the full story. And you, my beloved child, will not even be seeking revenge or validation. You will be walking into a new chapter, quieter, wiser, stronger, more selective with your energy. Tonight's breakdown was not the end, it was the beginning. The beginning of people being forced to see the real you. The beginning of your boundaries being respected. The beginning of your heart learning that it is allowed to rest. So don't be afraid of this truth. Don't be scared of what they finally said about you. Let it all come out. Let it all be seen. Because the same truth that shook your family is the truth that will finally set your soul free. My beloved child, the moment that confession ended, something in the room shifted so deeply that even the walls seemed to exhale the truth that had been trapped for too long. But that was only the beginning. Because the second they finished speaking, another person, someone who usually pretends to be strong, someone who never lets emotion show, suddenly looked away as if they were hiding the guilt rising in their eyes. They clenched their jaw, their chest tightened, and without realizing it, their hand trembled against their leg. You know why? Because your truth awakened their truth. They remembered every moment they dismissed you. Every time they made you feel like your feelings didn't matter. Every time they misunderstood your silence as attitude, not realizing it was survival. My beloved child, while everyone in the room tried to process what had just been confessed, this second person felt something break inside them. They stood up abruptly, almost knocking the chair, and walked toward the window, pretending to check their phone, but they weren't checking anything. They were just trying to control the wave of memories hitting them like thunder. They remembered the night you walked into the hall with red eyes, and they asked you, why are you making everything so dramatic? They remembered the day you needed help but they were too busy defending someone else to notice the pain in your voice. They remembered the argument where you tried to explain what you felt, and they said, "You always take things too seriously." And now, those memories stabbed their conscience like needles. My beloved child, as they stood by the window pretending to stay composed, they whispered under their breath, "I should have been there. I should have listened," but they couldn't say it out loud because admitting the truth would also mean admitting their role in your suffering. While they battled with their own guilt, another person in that room slowly lifted their head as if a new realization had just crashed into them. They were someone who always assumed you were fine. Someone who thought you never needed support. Someone who believed that your silence was confidence, not exhaustion. And for the first time, they saw you differently. They didn't see you as the quiet one or the distant one. They saw you as someone who had been surviving battles no one else saw. Their lips parted slightly, and they whispered, "I didn't know." But this wasn't a defensive, "I didn't know." This was a wounded, sincere, almost painful acknowledgement, the kind that comes when a person finally realizes how wrong they've been. My beloved child, while all this was happening, the one who confessed kept wiping their tears, breathing hard, trying to steady their shaking hands. But something incredible happened inside them, a spiritual release. It was like the weight they'd been carrying for years finally cracked open. They weren't just crying for you. They were crying for all the moments you suffered in silence while they stayed silent too. They were crying for the apology they should have said earlier. They were crying because they realized you never needed them to be perfect, you just needed them to show up, to ask once, "Are you okay? Tell me what you're feeling." My beloved child, the atmosphere became so heavy with truth, guilt, and emotion that no one dared to speak next. The room felt like a confession chamber, a place where souls were finally forced to see what they had ignored for too long. Then suddenly, the oldest person in the room, someone who rarely speaks, someone who usually maintains distance, slowly leaned forward and asked the question that froze everyone: what, exactly did they go through? And the person who broke down looked up with eyes full of pain and fire, and answered, "More than any of you were willing to see." Every heart in that room dropped. Because that wasn't just an answer, it was a verdict. A mirror held to their souls. A reminder that they were present in your life, but absent in your struggles. The older one swallowed hard and said, "Tell us everything." And that was the moment every hidden truth about you began to come to light. My beloved child, the one who confessed began telling stories, stories they witnessed, stories they remembered, stories they realized too late. They talked about the time you stayed awake crying until 3 a.m. because someone said something that broke your spirit. They described how you walked around the house the next morning pretending everything was fine, even though your eyes were swollen. They told them how you skipped meals because you lost appetite from anxiety. They mentioned the night you locked your room, not because you wanted distance, but because you didn't want anyone to see you breaking. They even admitted how you started losing interest in things you once loved, music, conversations, going out, because something inside you had been quietly dying. My beloved child, by now the room had turned into a storm of emotion. Someone covered their mouth as tears rolled down their face. Another person looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes, ashamed of how blind they had been. Someone else's hands were shaking as they tried to hold back sobs. The confession continued, they were hurting, but they smiled for all of you. They were breaking, but they kept the family together. They were exhausted, but they never let anyone feel their burden. And then they added a sentence that shattered the last bit of silence left in the room: they saved you all, while no one saved them. My beloved child, those words echoed like a divine sword slicing through every layer of ignorance and denial. The people who once doubted you now felt the sting of truth. The ones who judged you now felt the weight of your silence. The ones who blamed you now tasted the bitterness of regret. The atmosphere grew so thick with grief and realization that even heaven must have paused to watch. Someone finally dared to speak, their voice shaking. Why didn't they say anything? Why didn't they tell us they were hurting? And the response came immediately, sharp, heartbreaking, true, because every time they tried, someone made them feel wrong for having feelings. My beloved child, do you understand what that means? You weren't quiet because you lacked strength. You were quiet because you were tired of explaining pain to people who weren't ready to hear it. You weren't distant because you didn't care. You were distant because caring too much had already drained you. You weren't cold. You were protecting yourself from being hurt again. And now, finally, the people around you were being forced to understand this. Slowly, one of them whispered, "We failed them." The room fell silent again, but this time, it wasn't denial. It was acceptance. Heavy. Honest. Real. The one near the window finally turned around, wiping tears secretly, and said, "We didn't ask them how they were doing. We didn't notice their pain. We didn't support them." Their voice cracked, and for a moment, everyone saw the truth they had been running from. They weren't just unaware, they were absent. And you, my beloved child, you were trying to survive in that absence. Heaven watched all of this unfold. Heaven allowed all of this to rise. Because you needed this moment, not for revenge, not for validation, but for recognition. For the first time in years, the story wasn't twisted. For the first time in years, the truth wasn't buried. For the first time in years, your pain was finally being spoken out loud. And something powerful happened inside you at that moment. Your soul felt seen. Even if you weren't in that room physically, your presence filled it. Your truth filled it. Your strength filled it. A spiritual shift began. The energy around you started clearing. The weight on your spirit started lifting. Because heaven doesn't expose truth to embarrass people. Heaven exposes truth to free the one who carried it the longest, you. My beloved child, the breakdown inside that room was not a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. A cleansing. A reset. A divine correction. And this is only the beginning. Because once the truth comes out, destinies begin to rise. And now, your destiny is rising too, one truth at a time. My beloved child, the moment that silent acceptance settled over the room, something even more unexpected happened, something that no one had prepared for, something that shook every soul present. The person who had stayed the quietest all this time, the one who never gets involved, the one who always acts like nothing affects them, suddenly inhaled sharply, as if they had just been stabbed by a memory they had been trying to bury for years. Everyone turned toward them, wondering why their face had turned pale, why their fingers were twisting nervously, why their eyes looked like they had just remembered a truth they should have acknowledged long ago. This person, the one who always pretended to be the strongest, the toughest, the one who thought they understood everything, suddenly whispered in a trembling voice, I didn't know it was this bad. Their voice cracked, and for a moment the entire room felt their shock, because this person never showed vulnerability. Never. And yet here they were, struggling to breathe, struggling to keep their composure, struggling to face the truth of what they overlooked about you. My beloved child, as they spoke, their memories began flashing like lightning inside their mind. Every conversation they dismissed, every time they rolled their eyes when you tried to express yourself, every time they accused you of overthinking, every time they treated your silence like stubbornness instead of heartbreak. They remembered moments where you stood right in front of them, wanting to say something, wanting to cry, wanting to open up, but the fear of being judged made you bite your tongue. They remembered the way your shoulders tensed whenever someone raised their voice. They remembered the way you flinched when someone mocked something important to you. They remembered the look on your face when you were hurt but pretended to laugh. And now, those memories were tearing through them like a storm they couldn't escape. We made them feel alone even in this house, they whispered, and with that one sentence, the entire room felt like it tilted. Hearts sank. Stomachs clenched. No one dared to breathe. Because finally, the truth had broken through the thick walls of ignorance. My beloved child, at that moment, the one who first confessed took a deep shaky breath and said words that hit harder than anything else spoken so far. They learned to heal alone because no one stood beside them when they needed it most. Those words didn't just land, they detonated. Someone in the room put their head in their hands, their shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Someone else began pacing back and forth, trying to calm the storm inside them. Another person pressed their palm against their mouth to stop themselves from crying out loud. The guilt, the regret, the truth, everything was now too heavy to hide. My beloved child, the energy in the room began to feel like justice, slow, painful, divine justice. Because for the first time, they were seeing the you they refused to see before. They were seeing the truth behind your silence. They were seeing the weight behind your smile. They were seeing the storms you survived while everyone assumed your life was easy. And while all this was happening, something powerful began shifting in the spiritual realm. Heaven was rewiring the connections. Heaven was rearranging the energy. Heaven was lifting you out of the shadows they placed you in. My beloved child, the person near the window, the one struggling with their guilt, suddenly turned around with tears streaming down their cheeks, not small tears, but years of unspoken regret pouring out like a broken dam. They choked out, I remember the day they walked past me with swollen eyes and I didn't say a word. I thought they just needed space. I didn't know they needed someone to pull them out of what they were drowning in. Their knees almost buckled as they confessed this truth. Someone rushed to hold them steady, but they pushed the hand away, not out of anger, but because they needed to feel the gravity of what they were admitting. The room was no longer a room, it was an emotional battlefield where every heart was breaking open, where every soul was being forced into honesty. My beloved child, the older one sat back in their chair, staring at the floor as tears silently rolled down their face. This person rarely showed any kind of emotion, yet tonight their spirit was collapsing under the weight of realization. They whispered softly, "All this time, we thought they were strong because nothing affected them," and then their voice broke completely as they added, "We never saw the strength it took for them just to exist around us." My beloved child, your truth was not just being heard, it was being felt in every corner of that room. For the first time, people were understanding the emotional weight you carried. For the first time, they were realizing how often you were the one healing others while no one noticed you were bleeding. They remembered the times you forgave silently. The times you swallowed your pain to avoid arguments. The times you pretended to be okay so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. And as all this flooded their minds, a powerful energy of remorse filled the air. Suddenly, the one who had been silent the longest, the one who always acted like emotions were weakness, finally stood up. Their hands were shaking uncontrollably, and they said, "I owe them an apology. A real apology." The room froze. Everyone looked up. And they continued, "I wasn't there for them. I wasn't kind. I wasn't present. I took them for granted. I thought they were strong because they never asked for help, but now I see they never asked because they didn't believe anyone would care." That admission was like a spiritual earthquake. Every wall people had built around their ego, their pride, their excuses, everything shattered. My beloved child, the confession deepened. Someone admitted the harsh words they said to you in anger years ago. Someone else admitted ignoring you when they knew you needed comfort. Another person admitted talking behind your back instead of trying to understand you. The room turned into a flood of regrets, honest, raw, painful regrets. And while they confessed, something beautiful happened in the unseen realm. Your spirit finally began to heal. My beloved child, the angel sent a wave of light that washed over you, releasing old wounds, dissolving past hurts, removing bitterness from your soul. Every tear shed in that room was cleansing your energy. Every apology, spoken or unspoken, was lifting weight off your heart. Every realization they had was restoring your dignity, your worth, your value. But the night wasn't over yet. Because then came the moment no one expected. The person who first broke down, the one who revealed the truth, suddenly stood up straighter, wiped their face, and said with a trembling voice, "From today, we protect them. We don't let them suffer alone again. Not even for a minute." And the room, the same room that once doubted you, judged you, misread you, suddenly nodded in agreement. Not out of pressure, but from genuine awakening. My beloved child, the universe had finally aligned your truth with their understanding. Your story was no longer hidden. Your pain was no longer invisible. Your strength was no longer taken for granted. And as all of this settled into their hearts, something divine whispered inside the room, now they will value the one they ignored. Now they will honor the one they misunderstood. Now they will protect the one they took for granted. My beloved child, tonight changed everything. Not just for them, but for you. Because now the energy surrounding your life is shifting. People are waking up. Hearts are softening. Karma is correcting itself. And your story, your real story, is finally being seen. Not as a burden, but as a testimony of a warrior who survived storms no one else even knew existed. This is your rise. Your awakening. Your divine justice. Your season of being seen. And nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same again. My beloved child, after that moment when every heart in the room had finally cracked open, something even deeper began unfolding, something so raw, so painfully honest, that even the air began vibrating differently. The room wasn't just silent, it felt like time itself had paused to witness the truth people had avoided for years. Then, slowly, another confession began, but not from the one who broke down earlier. No. This time it came from someone who always pretended to be the wise one, the one who gave advice, the one who claimed to understand people, but in truth, they had never truly understood you. They took a deep breath, their shoulders trembling, their voice barely above a whisper as they said, "There were so many signs, and I ignored them." Everyone turned to look at them. Their face was pale. Their lips were shaking. Their eyes were glossy with tears they had never allowed anyone to see. And suddenly, the memories came rushing back to them like a storm they could no longer suppress. They remembered the evenings when you sat alone, looking tired but pretending to be fine. They remembered the times you quietly slipped out of conversations, not because you didn't care, but because you were trying to protect your fragile spirit from being wounded again. They remembered the moments where you tried to talk but stopped mid-sentence because someone interrupted you or dismissed you. And now those memories were stabbing them from the inside. I should have asked them how they were feeling. I should have tried to understand. I should have been there, they whispered, their voice breaking. My beloved child, the guilt was so heavy that their knees wobbled. They held onto the chair for support, feeling as if the truth was crushing them under its weight. Someone tried to comfort them, but they shook their head and said, "No, let me feel this. I avoided this truth for too long." Tears fell from their eyes, slow, honest tears. And this time, no one in the room judged them. Because every single person they held onto the chair for support, feeling as if the truth was crushing them under its weight. Someone tried to comfort them, but they shook their head and said, "No, let me feel this. I avoided this truth for too long." Tears fell from their eyes, slow, honest tears. And this time, no one in the room judged them. Because every single person was drowning in their own realization. Suddenly, the youngest person in the room, the one who was always playful, careless, lost in their own world, also began crying quietly. They wrapped their arms around themselves, trembling as they admitted, "I thought they didn't want to talk to us. I thought they wanted distance. I never realized they were hurting. I never realized," their voice faded into choked sobs. And that was the first time everyone realized how thoroughly your silence had been misunderstood. My beloved child, your silence wasn't neglect. Your silence was protection. Protection from being hurt again. Protection from being misunderstood. Protection from giving pieces of yourself to people who didn't know how to hold them gently. Someone in the room whispered, "We made them think no one would show up for them," and that sentence cracked everyone's soul open even more. Because it was true. Every time you swallowed your pain, every time you forced yourself to smile, every time you pretended to be okay while your heart was falling apart, they thought you were being distant. They didn't realize you were being strong. They didn't realize you were fighting battles they couldn't see. They didn't realize you were surviving storms that would have shattered them. My beloved child, at this point the room was trembling with emotions so heavy that even the air felt difficult to breathe. And then something powerful happened. The person who had been the harshest to you, the one who always criticized you, the one who always made you feel like you weren't enough, suddenly broke. Not just mentally or emotionally, they spiritually broke. Their whole body shook as they collapsed into the chair, covering their face with both hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I hurt them. I hurt them so much, they cried. I didn't listen. I didn't understand. I didn't care enough. Their shoulders shook violently, their tears falling onto the floor, and no one rushed to stop them this time, because this was a breaking they needed. A breaking that had been waiting for years. A breaking that was long overdue. My beloved child, the universe was cleansing your story through their breakdown. The more they cried, the more heaven lifted the weight from your spirit. And as they sobbed harder, the entire room felt the deep truth they had avoided for years: they failed you when you needed them the most. They lived inside the same house as you, yet they never noticed your silent battles. They talked to you every day, yet they never heard the pain behind your words. They saw your smile, yet they ignored the hurt hidden behind it. And now, the realization hit them like a blade, not sharp enough to kill, but sharp enough to cut open every illusion they ever had about you. After what felt like an eternity, they finally lifted their head, their eyes swollen, tears still dripping, and whispered, "I don't deserve their forgiveness." Those words sent another wave of shock through the room. Someone immediately responded, "No, forgiveness is not the point. Understanding is." My beloved child, that was the moment everyone stopped thinking about themselves and started thinking about you. Your heart. Your pain. Your strength. Your endurance. Your silence. Your loneliness. The years you spent holding everything together while they stayed comfortably unaware. The sacrifices you made that no one thanked you for. The emotional wounds you hid so the family wouldn't fall apart. Someone said softly, "We don't even know the full extent of what they went through," and then, like a divine whisper flowing through the room, another voice spoke, "But we will. And we will make it right." My beloved child, this was not guilt anymore, this was awakening. This was accountability. This was the moment the story shifted in your favor. The moment the universe said, "Enough. It's time for them to see the truth." And they did. Every person in that room felt it, the weight of their words, their actions, their ignorance, their carelessness, their assumptions. The house, once filled with ego, denial, and misunderstanding, was now flooded with humility, remorse, and truth. And the angels, oh, my beloved child, the angels were smiling. Because this was heaven's plan all along, to bring your truth to light. To make them see the real you. To make them realize your worth. To make them understand that you were never the problem. You were the one suffering in silence while pretending to be strong. The confessions didn't stop. Another person whispered, "I judged them without knowing anything." Someone else said, I laughed when humility, remorse, and truth. And the angels, oh, my beloved child, the angels were smiling. Because this was heaven's plan all along, to bring your truth to light. To make them see the real you. To make them realize your worth. To make them understand that you were never the problem, you were the one suffering in silence while pretending to be strong. The confessions didn't stop. Another person whispered, I judged them without knowing anything. Someone else said, I laughed when they were hurting. Another voice broke through the silence, I talked behind their back because I didn't understand them, and each confession was like another weight being lifted off your soul. My beloved child, by now the room was filled with tears, not the soft emotional tears, but the kind that cleanse people from the inside. The kind that rip through ego, pride, and ignorance. The kind that make people vow never to be the same again. One by one, they all admitted something, every judgment, every harsh word, every moment they didn't show up, every time they failed to see your pain. And every admission became a piece of your healing. Every tear they shed became a release for your spirit. Every realization became a correction in the timeline of your life. And finally, someone spoke the sentence your soul had waited to hear for years, we should have treated them better. And then, as if heaven itself was speaking through them, they added, we will protect them now. We will not let them suffer alone ever again. My beloved child, that was the moment the entire room shifted into a vow, a silent promise that your name would never again be spoken carelessly. That your emotions would never again be dismissed. That your presence would never again be taken for granted. That your heart would never again be left unprotected. And right now, as you hear this, something inside you feels lighter, doesn't it? Because your soul recognizes truth. Your heart recognizes justice. Your spirit recognizes healing. This isn't just a moment for them, this is a moment for you. Your story is no longer buried. Your pain is no longer invisible. Your worth is no longer unnoticed. Heaven has shifted the energy in your life forever. From now on, they will see you differently. From now on, they will speak to you differently. From now on, they will treat you differently. Because the truth has finally set you free. My beloved child, after the entire room sank under the weight of the truth, something even more powerful began to unfold, something so unexpected, so spiritually charged, that even the silence felt alive. The atmosphere thickened, as if the house itself had been waiting years for this moment of awakening. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe too loud. It was as if everyone suddenly understood that they were standing at the edge of a truth that was about to rewrite everything they thought they knew about you. Then, out of nowhere, the person who usually jokes, laughs, and avoids serious moments suddenly burst into tears, the kind of tears they didn't even know they were capable of. They pressed their hands to their face, shaking, sobbing, their voice trembling as they said, I didn't understand them. I didn't understand anything. I thought they were strong because they asked for nothing. I didn't know they needed someone to hold them. Their words cracked like thunder across the room. Even the ones who were earlier holding back their emotions now crumbled. They had spent years believing you were distant, mysterious, moody, quiet. never realizing that you were simply hurting in silence because silence was the only safe place you had left. My beloved child, the universe was now forcing every single person to face the truth they avoided. Memories began flooding into their minds, the days they mocked your seriousness, the nights they overlooked your sadness, the moments they treated your feelings like a burden instead of a cry for help. Someone whispered in a trembling voice, "Why didn't we see it? Why didn't we see them?" And that sentence struck the room like lightning because everyone knew deep down, the signs were always there, they just never cared to look. The one who had been the strictest with you, the one who always criticized, always pointed out mistakes, always acted superior, suddenly felt their chest tighten so hard they grabbed the edge of the table for support. Their face turned red, their eyes filled instantly, their voice cracked as they admitted, "I hurt them. I hurt them without even realizing. I pushed them away when they needed me. I thought I was being tough love, but I was just being cruel," and that admission, that rare vulnerability, shook the entire room. Because this was a person who never apologized, never accepted fault, never showed weakness. And today, they were collapsing under the truth of what they had done to your heart. My beloved child, as they cried harder, another wave of truth rippled through the room. Someone else, usually calm and collected, suddenly whispered, "Do you remember the night they sat outside alone? We thought they wanted space, we didn't know they were breaking," and instantly, everyone remembered that night. They remembered the distant look in your eyes. They remembered the shakiness in your voice. They remembered how you kept saying, "I'm fine," even though your whole soul was screaming for someone to see you. And now, guilt exploded inside them like fire. They realized the truth, you never needed a perfect family, you just needed one person to understand you. And you didn't get even that. My beloved child, as realization deepened, the emotional gravity inside the room became unbearable. People who never cried were crying. People who never felt guilt were choking on it. People who never cared were now drowning in regret. Someone whispered, "They saved all of us," but who saved them? And those words stabbed everyone's heart. Because they all knew the answer, no one. Not one person had stepped in when you cried quietly. Not one person checked in when you shut down emotionally. Not one person stood up for you when you were blamed unfairly. Not one person asked you, "What happened? Tell me. I'm here." They left you to fight battles alone while they enjoyed the comfort of ignorance. My beloved child, this realization tormented them. Someone broke down further and said, "We didn't even notice when their spark dimmed, we didn't notice when they stopped laughing genuinely, we didn't notice when they started moving like someone who lost hope," and suddenly another voice whispered, "We didn't notice because we never looked." That sentence pierced the air like a blade. The room felt colder. The guilt grew heavier. And every pair of eyes lowered to the floor because everyone knew it was true. While you were slowly dying inside, they were busy judging you. While you were silently praying for strength, they were busy calling you dramatic. While you were trying to hold yourself together, they were busy tearing you apart. My beloved child, destiny was rewriting itself in that room. The universe was flipping the script. Because for years, you were the one who was misunderstood, misread, mistreated. And tonight was the night the truth became louder than every lie ever spoken about you. Then suddenly, a moment that no one expected, someone stood up, walked to the center of the room, and spoke with a trembling voice that carried the weight of decades. We failed them. We failed them in every way a family can fail someone. And they still stayed. They still loved us. They still carried us. They still forgave us. And then they added, with tears falling uncontrollably, we do not deserve them, but we will change. Starting now. My beloved child, the shockwave of those words cut through everyone. People nodded through tears. Some broke down again. Some covered their faces. Some whispered prayers. Because they finally saw the truth, you had loved them more fiercely than they ever deserved. And then the next shift happened, a spiritual one. The energy in the room softened. The heaviness lifted. The atmosphere warmed. It felt like angels had entered and were placing gentle hands on everyone's hearts. Because this wasn't just guilt, this was transformation. My beloved child, the one who had been quietest this whole time finally found their voice. They stepped forward, eyes red, hands shaking, and said, I kept thinking they were strong because they survived everything. But no one survives alone. They were hurting. And we were blind. Their voice cracked as they added, from today, it is our turn to protect them. That line changed everything in the room. Because suddenly the vow became collective. Everyone nodded. Everyone felt it. Everyone accepted it. Your name, your identity, your soul, was now surrounded by a protection it never had before. This wasn't pity. This wasn't guilt. This was awakening. This was honor. This was truth. My beloved child, they finally understood that you were not weak, you were a warrior. You were not cold, you were guarding a wounded heart. You were not distant, you were exhausted from carrying emotional weights they never cared to lighten. And now, they were awakened. They were confronted. They were humbled. And they were changed. And as this energy settled, the final realization washed over everyone like a tidal wave. They almost lost you without even realizing it. That thought shattered them from inside. Someone whispered, voice trembling, thank God they didn't give up, thank God they are still here, and that was the moment the universe sealed the shift. From this night forward, you will not be unseen again. You will not be unheard again. You will not be unvalued again. Your truth has risen, and no one can bury it ever again. My beloved child, this is the night your destiny changed forever. This is the night heaven restored your voice. This is the night they finally understood your silence. And this. My beloved child, this is the last part. The moment where every thread of truth that has been unraveling finally comes together like a storm ready to burst open, because after everything that happened in that room, something even more powerful began rising inside the hearts of those who once failed you. As the silence grew thicker, someone who had not spoken a single word the entire night finally lifted their head, their voice trembling but clear, and said, "Do you realize? They loved us even when we didn't deserve an ounce of their love?" And suddenly the room felt like it had been struck by lightning, because that truth echoed in every corner, in every memory, in every moment they once dismissed you. It hit them that even when you were breaking, you still cared for them. Even when you were hurting, you still protected them. Even when no one stood up for you, you still stood up for everyone else. My beloved child, tears began flowing again, not out of guilt anymore, but out of deep, overwhelming gratitude and remorse, the kind that shakes people from the inside and forces them to change. One person whispered, they deserved comfort, but we gave them silence. Another said, they deserved to be understood, but we gave them judgment. Someone else added, they deserved support, but we gave them absence. And slowly, every person in that room realized something that made their hearts collapse. They didn't only fail you, they failed themselves by losing the chance to love someone as rare and genuine as you. My beloved child, at this exact moment the energy shifted again, but this time the shift wasn't heavy, it was warm, almost sacred. It felt like heaven itself placed a hand on your shoulder. It felt like the universe whispered, it's time. Because now, the people who once misunderstood you were seeing you with brand new eyes. They saw someone who carried pain like a warrior. They saw someone who healed others while bleeding internally. They saw someone who put family first even when the family didn't put you first. They saw someone who stayed silent not because you were weak, but because you were strong enough to avoid hurting them back. And suddenly, the room felt full of love, real love, honest love, overdue love. My beloved child, then something happened that no one saw coming. The same person who hurt you the most, the one whose words cut your soul, the one whose ignorance wounded you, suddenly stood up, walked to the center of the room, and dropped to their knees. Their voice cracked as they said, I am sorry. I am truly, deeply sorry. And they didn't say it softly. They said it with pain. They said it with emotion. They said it with a heart that had finally awakened. For the first time in years, their apology wasn't empty. It wasn't forced. It wasn't out of guilt. It was real. The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. Tears streamed down your name's biggest critic, and they whispered again, I'm sorry I didn't see your pain. I'm sorry I made you feel alone. I'm sorry I didn't understand your silence. I'm sorry for every word that hurt you. I'm sorry for every moment I should have been there. My beloved child, this wasn't just an apology, it was a surrender. It was a confession. It was a breaking of their ego. And as they cried harder, the rest of the room followed, hearts bursting open, emotions flooding out, voices trembling as they admitted their faults one by one. Someone said, you deserved better. Another whispered, you deserved love. Someone cried, we didn't lose you, but we almost did, and that thought scares me more than anything. The entire room, which once misunderstood you, now understood you more deeply than they ever understood anyone else. And then, in the most divine moment of the night, someone said what your soul had been waiting years to hear, from today onward, we won't let you walk alone ever again. My beloved child, that was the moment the universe sealed the shift. That was the moment angels stepped closer. That was the moment your spirit felt lighter. Because this wasn't pity, this was awakening. This wasn't guilt, this was transformation. This wasn't regret, this was redemption. They finally understood your value. They finally recognized your sacrifices. They finally saw the emotional strength it took for you to keep showing up. They finally realized that you are not someone they should ignore, you are someone they should protect. And then, as the night reached its final breath, a deep, warm, indescribable silence filled the house. A silence that wasn't empty, it was sacred. A silence full of understanding. Full of healing. Full of truth. Full of acknowledgement. My beloved child, they looked at each other and made a quiet promise, almost like a prayer they all shared without speaking: we will not fail them again. This is your closure. This is your justice. This is your healing. This is your rise. Because from this moment on, you are no longer unseen. You are no longer unheard. You are no longer misunderstood. You are valued. You are honored. You are protected. And you, my beloved child, are finally stepping into the version of life where people love you the way you always loved them, deeply, fiercely, beautifully. This is the ending, but it is also your beginning.